Hi and welcome to this different version of the podcast, or special edition of the podcast, if you will. My name is Ida, and we are going to talk about Christmas sweaters because there are just so many beautiful ones out there. I've been eyeing a lot this year, and I feel like every year I just see more and more beautiful Christmas sweaters on social media. That's where I see most of, if not all of, the knitwear that I like and that I knit. And I wanted to share my favorites with you. A little disclaimer, I generally follow a lot of Danish people on Instagram and Danish knitwear designers. I am from Denmark, and so that is probably why. Also some Norwegians, German and Swedish, and some from the US, but many of these sweaters are sort of from designers within those countries that I just mentioned. I know there are plenty of other beautiful patterns out there, but I just wanted to share the ones that I've found and that I like. Let's just jump right into it. I think I'm gonna start with the more classic patterns that I've found, and then we'll just go from there. The first pattern that I want to share with you is Kristjørn sweater by Rimmen, which is a Danish knitwear designer. The pattern is available in 5 languages, so we have Danish, English, German, Norwegian, and Swedish, so there's plenty for everyone. And it's a yoke sweater with some patterns like holly twigs here on the front, and knitted top down, and it looks like the holly berries are added after you knit the sweater. So you knit the collarwork, which is the holly twigs, and then you knit the rest of the sweater, and then you add the berries. And she has added both white and blueberries, but white berries, but of course you can decide yourself. You could also just knit it without the berries if you wanted to. The gauge is 17 stitches. I'm looking over here because I have all the notes here on my computer, but the gauge is 17 stitches per 10 centimeters, and it's just a beautiful classic Christmas sweater. I think the one that she's made, I'll see if I can put pictures of both of them, but she's made one in white with green twigs and then red berries, which is very Christmassy to me. But she's also made one with the white berries, and I find that the one with the white berries is more sort of a winter sweater, more so than a Christmas sweater. So if you wanted to knit a Christmas sweater to use for Christmas, but that you also wanted to use just like beyond December, I think doing like a blue version with the white berries would be a good option for you. The next sweater is the Old Christmas Tree sweater by Yasmin and Ansari. Probably not saying that correctly. I will be sure to add the names as well so you can see what I'm actually trying to say. But this is like a very beautiful sort of 70s inspired Christmas sweater. It has some really, I love the colors, which is very 70s. It has like a beigey main color and some stripes on the sleeves, quite big sleeves. And then it has a Christmas tree motif right on the front of the body. And as far as I can see, it's a drop shoulder. I'm pretty sure it is a drop shoulder. Yeah, it's a drop shoulder, and it has a gauge of 14 stitches, so you could knit this up fairly quickly, which is also, we are now in November, and if you wanted to knit something for Christmas, that would be a good option depending on your knitting speed. I am not a fast knitter, but I know some people are very fast. Another fun thing about the sweater is that the Christmas tree is decorated with wooden beads, and it says in the pattern that there are instructions on how to do that. So I don't know if you add the beads afterwards or if you do it while you knit the sweater, but nonetheless it's just a fun way, sort of more texture, if you will, to the sweater that I really like. Next up is the Sleigh sweater by Espace Tricot, and that's a top-down, sort of tighter fitted garment with a reindeer motif on the front of the yoke. I'm assuming it's knitted top-down, and I think the floats can be quite long on this one, so I think you would probably need to have some experience doing color work if you did this pattern. I'm just saying this because I'm not good at color work, and I think I would want to work on something else before I did this one, but I just included it because it's just kind of a beautiful classic pattern, and I kind of like how they knit it. So basically it's just knit in a light gray and a black yarn. The colors aren't overly Christmassy, but the motif of the color work is Christmassy, so I kind of like that contrast between the more classic colors and then the Christmas color work. They did add a red nose on one of the reindeer. They did just a bit of embroidery, I think, for that one, just to make him into Rudolph, which is just a fun little thing, but you could leave that out if you just wanted to keep it completely classic. It's knit in at a DK weight with a DK weight yarn, and I think it's knit with 2 strands held together as far as I can see. I'm not going to get too much into what yarns they use and everything. I find if you find it interesting and you want to know more about it, you can go and have a look at that yourself. But yeah, just a very fun classic Christmas sweater that isn't really that classic. I like this one. The last of the more classic Christmas sweaters is the Julegenser by Sandnes Garn, and this is available in Norwegian, English and German, and the pattern is free if you buy the yarn for the Sandnes yarn for it. I'm not sure. I think you may be able to get the pattern without the yarn, but then you obviously have to pay for the pattern. But this is just a very classic Christmas sweater, all over color work, white background, and it has like Christmas motifs with the Christmas tree, reindeer, some flowers, and yeah, it's just a fun classic Christmas sweater that, for me at least, it would only be a sweater that I would wear in December. It's just too much for me. I would not wear this in any other month just because it's such a classic one. They have styled it very well in the pattern. So on the website with the model, she's wearing a high-waisted skirt and some long socks, and she looks very cool, but I would not be able to wear that look. But I love the pattern, and if I were a faster knitter than I am, I would be tempted to knit this one just for fun, because it's a fun, very classic, for me, Christmas sweater, but still more modern than some other classic Christmas sweaters, I guess. So the yarn is obviously Sandnes yarn, and the gauge doesn't really say what gauge it is, so I don't know. That is quite interesting why they don't include the gauge here. But looking at it, it looks like it's a DK weight, but I'm just guessing here. That would be my guess. We are moving on to the more modern Christmas sweaters, if you could say, in lack of a better word. I think that's what I would call this next section. And we are starting off with a sweater called the Snow Wonder by Heidi Kirmaier. And that's a raglan sweater with a very fun big snowflake on the front. So this is not a color work, it's just a snowflake made with bubbles, and I just think it's so fun. And also a sweater you could wear for more than just December. It doesn't look that hard to do either, but of course you would have to enjoy making bubbles because there are quite a few bubbles in this sweater. It's a very big snowflake. You kind of have it all on the front of the sweater. It's a raglan knitted top down, and I like kind of the fit of it. It sits quite nicely on the body of the model, and even looks like a sweater that I would knit just, you know, without the snowflake. It just looks like a very nice fitting pattern, I find. The gauge is 19 stitches, so could also be fairly quick to knit. Yeah, and knit top down, raglan, like I said, and just a bit of a different Christmassy sweater that would be an option to knit if you wanted something that was different than like the classic Christmas sweaters. Next up we have the Emma sweater by Simone Ryan, or also called Rust Knitwear. This is an oversized drop shoulder sweater, knitted top down, and with a very simple but sort of, I would almost say, like statement piece of color work at the bottom of the sweater. It isn't like a classic Christmas sweater as such, but she's knit one in white and red and white, and just using those colors definitely makes this, to me, sort of gives me Christmas vibes. But you could also knit one, she's made one in black with white for the color work. And I just find that this is just would be a good option if you, like me, are a slower knitter and you want to be able to wear your sweater for more than just December. It also has color work on the sleeves, and it has a gauge of 19 stitches per 10 centimeters, so it's also yeah, a bit quicker to knit than if you were, for example, to knit a sweater in a fingering weight yarn. Oh, and I'm just looking at the pattern. There's also people who's just made it without the color work, and it just looks like a very nice, again, like the previous pattern, just a very nice fitting sweater. So many options with this one. You can do it without the color work. Of course, it wouldn't be a Christmas sweater, but you know, it's just always nice to have options for a pattern that you knit. So you could decide to do both, just knit it with the pattern, but also without the pattern. I have to include the lighted up yoke sweater by Janine Muska, or she's also called Knits and Knots, because it's just such a fun take on a Christmas sweater. So it's a top-down sweater with a turtleneck, has a contrast color up here at the front, and then you knit the rest of the body in the main color and you add the contrast color at the bottom. But the fun part is the string of lights that is just added all the way around the yoke, and it's added, as far as I can see, it's embroidered on. So you knit the sweater and then you do the embroidery of those Christmas lights afterwards. I don't think it's that difficult to do, but you would have to be okay with doing embroidery because there is quite a lot of that for this pattern. The gauge is 16 stitches per 10 centimeters, and I think it's a collaboration that she's done with Lion brand yarns. You could also, if you are not really into the fit of the sweater, for me, I would not really go for a sweater like this. I like kind of a bit more oversized like this, and this sweater is definitely more on the fitted side, but you could just use your favorite sweater pattern, knit that up, and then you could add that string of light on your favorite sweater pattern, basically. And that's the beautiful thing about the embroidery part. You could basically just add it on whatever you want, or whatever sweater that suits you the best. But yeah, check it out. It's just a fun pattern, I find. Northern Augustins number 6 by Anne-Sophie Velling is again a classic Christmas sweater, but still kind of has, to me, a modern feel, and I've been trying to figure out why that is. And I think it's two things. I think it's one, like the fit of the sweater. It's a top-down yoke sweater, but it has an oversized, more modern shape to it. It also has very kind of classic colorwork motifs up here in the front, but I think because they're on the smaller sides, they are not as sort of screaming Christmas right in your face. You kind of have to get up close to see what the colorwork actually shows, and that's why I've added this in the modern section of the podcast rather than in the classic. But I guess you could argue that it's also more on the classic side because of the colorwork. But I've added it in the modern because, yeah, it's my podcast and I get to decide. Yeah, but this is knit with a 22 stitch gauge. It has 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 small sort of motifs up here on the front. Then it has quite big sleeves and also a big body, and has sort of a kind of like a tight knitted, tight fitting collar, kind of like this one actually, on the neck, and it's just knit with some beautiful colors. I really like the colors that she's chosen, and I see a lot of people are knitting the pattern actually using the exact same colors that she has used, just because it's beautiful. It just works well together. There's also a children's version of this one, so if you wanted to match with your child, you could knit one for both you and your child. Moving on to the snow sweater by Knitting for Olive. This is a top-down yoke sweater with colorwork on the sleeves, which is different from a lot of other Christmas sweaters that I've seen, and also from any of the Christmas sweaters that I've talked about here. And I like that it has that different touch. So all the Christmas the Christmassy things that's going on is happening here on the sleeves. The sleeves has a I-cord edge here, and it has quite a lot of volume. Has snow going down the sleeve, and it has some fir trees and some snow, and it's just a fun take on a Christmas sweater, or different take on a Christmas sweater. They also have the same motif for a kid size sweater, but this one, the kid size, has the colorwork on the body instead, so you could again do a matching sweater if you wanted to. I don't think Knitting for Olive has made a Christmas sweater for adults before. I think this is their first one, and they did very well with that one. I know they've done a lot of dresses, like Christmas dresses, for many years for kids, but yeah, I think this is their first Christmas sweater. I have saved my favorite one for last, and it is by a designer I've mentioned before, but I just had to mention both of her patterns because I love them so much. But this one is my favorite of all the Christmas sweaters. It's the Northern Augustins number 4, and it is a, again, round yoke sweater with colorwork on the yoke, and kind of big sleeves, an oversized fit, and a colorwork that is Christmassy but also not Christmassy, if you will. So it has, I think she calls it a garland pattern here going out from the yoke all the way around, and then it has little bows going around here. I find that if you wear this sweater in December, people would be like, oh yeah, this is a very Christmassy sweater, just from the motif with the bows. But you could also wear them in November or in February, and it would just be kind of a cute sweater. So I find it's like a 2-in-1, depending on the season that you wear it. You could it could be a Christmas sweater, or it could just be a fun, cute sweater. And I think that is kind of genius with this sweater. It's Christmassy without being overly Christmassy. And I just love it. I think it's so gorgeous. I love the shape of it as well. And it is most definitely the one of all these sweaters that I would want to knit, because like I said, I could easily knit a sweater, or it could easily take me 6 months to knit a sweater. So I'm not gonna go for knitting a sweater that is only something that I feel like I could wear for December. I want something that I can wear for longer periods of time. Also, I do tend to knit on many things at once, so probably if I only knitted on a sweater, it would be faster. But yeah, that's just not how I knit. I like to have a lot of projects at the same time. But yeah, this is just, for me, ticks all the boxes of a perfect Christmas sweater. So I had to include it, even though I've already included another one from Anne-Sophie Velling. And with that, I'm gonna sign off now because I have to go pick up my kid from Børnehave. I hope you enjoyed. I'm gonna try to clip this together so it makes sense. And yeah, happy knitting and happy December whenever December rolls around.